What's the most disturbing thing you can think of? How about... Never seen those before? Let me clue you in. Today I'm going to be going through years of games and finding the absolute worst levels from the ones that really never sat right with me. In an otherwise tame game to entire nightmares. Meat mines to towns full of skinwalkers. We're going to be here a while, so let's get into it. Oh, and by the way, let me know down in the comments what you would like to see added to this list, if there's something you felt I left out. For our first location, you've decided to make a move out to the rural outskirts of a big city. At first things were nice, living on your own property. But eventually your neighbor randomly showed up at your door, not with introductions but with a warning. A family member of theirs claims something terrible is happening a few dozen miles away, and it's spreading fast. Against your better judgment, you let him in, only to find out there's something seriously wrong with the sun. Something like solar flares or explosions or something. Regardless, people are burning to death outside, and it is incredibly unbearably hot inside. News broadcasts shortly confirmed that it's unfortunately true, following it with Swan Lake performances, which, for those unfamiliar, is the Soviet government's indirect way of telling you you're likely fucked. Radios aren't going to be much better, as they're talking about a sort of pale man walking around outside, claiming specifically he's not human. Wow, okay, we really got ourselves into something this time. But in my opinion, the worst part is going to be the fact that you actually require to let people into your house. And this is going to be required to survive. Honestly, I'll take my chances with the sun at this point. Eventually, the neighbor leaves you with alcohol and sends you on your way. And already, Bro is my favorite character in the game. Suddenly, you begin to notice many people are already looking to bunker down with you. Remembering the whole don't stay alone thing, you're gonna have to take one of these people in. But which one is an actual person and which one is one of those entities known as visitors trying to enter your home? Now, lucky for you, the news only seems to mention how to properly identify them once your house is already full of people. But honestly, what would the alternative be? Keeping your house empty? I'll pass on that one. And to make things harder, 80% of the people that are showing up in your home basically already look like entities already. And the ones that are visitors have no idea. They just start randomly losing their mind, having gaps in their memory, and then there's the whole killing other people in your house and you thing. And I know I said this before, but I could just not handle this on any level. The not going outside part is livable, I guess, but it being scorching hot and having to interact with people in your home on a daily basis, I don't know, man, this might just be my hell. So is there really any saving grace in this town? Well, you do have the military just sitting around your property, as well as these agents in hazmat suits looking to evacuate survivors to a location unknown to you at the moment. So does this mean you could be saved? You honestly just have to guess for now. So you do your best ability to figure out which of the guests are humans and kill the ones that are visitors. One of the scariest parts of this is you really only have two ways to see the outside world for yourself. By looking outside and hearing from the guests directly, or by taking the option to trust the radio or TV. Both of which just seem to constantly be making your heart drop, as most humans you see outside, from teenagers to random drunk neighbors, and even the guards, have been cut down by what you can only assume was our favorite creepy ass loiterer. The radio isn't going to be any better, as FEMA, you know, the organization in hazmat suits that I was talking about earlier that's supposed to like be our only hope of not burning to death, became corrupt in all of like 30 seconds, and now the radio is talking about how they've been slaughtering people and blaming it on others that have lost their minds. They also are reported to be killing anyone who's trying to leave the city in any way, shape, and form, which I can't blame people for trying, because if I saw this thing, I'd want to leave the continent too. Eventually, they just want to wipe everyone out, and they take over the radio with it having mostly encoded lines, a few of which are particularly disturbing, such as,
"They shouldn't have burned the bodies, it draws it. If they left the remains, it wouldn't have come. Dispatch to all FEMA units. Code 451 is replaced with code 955. Do not burn bodies. Apply lime instead. Repeat, code 451 is cancelled. Burning remains has failed to contain the threat posed by the subject. This is 18-8. We couldn't contain it. The subject has left the city perimeter. Immediate backup required. We need backup now. We couldn't contain the subject alone."
What the fuck is going on out there, dude? I can't handle this shit anymore. Eventually, desperation kicks in, and you begin looking for any other way out, only to find some random dude has dug a tunnel system under your house. And at this point, I'm not even surprised. Following it leads to a random hole that I'm 90% sure that if you go down, you just die and end up in some sort of heaven. But at this point, that's a better fate than getting your door kicked in, or dying to some corrupt corporate assholes or psychopath vigilantes. I also want to mention that there are a lot of cult-related endings that end in you either burning yourself willingly or being crucified. To me, the situation is overall horrific and makes me want to bring back the "your fuck" scale, giving the city a solid 8, as there really is no ending that isn't complete hell. Now, a few videos back, I actually went over the worst jobs in analog horror, but if they were covering video games as well, this would honestly top the list. Picture you finally get a solid, stable career that pays pretty decent money, and all you have to do is deliver certain goods from A to B, except you're not doing it in like an Amazon delivery truck, rather you have to fly across space in a giant spaceship. This is the Tulpar, and this is an asteroid. Let's back up a bit. Another part of this job I didn't mention is that you're not alone. You always have to be on board with a nurse, engineer, co-engineer, captain, and co-captain. And while originally most of them are normal people, there is only so much the human mind can take before taking desperate measures, mainly killing each other and crashing the spaceship purposely. And this isn't just a quick day there, day back. You were on this ship in space for months, and following the crash, this number goes up exponentially. On top of this, hallucinations start to become rampant, either from the idea that you're stuck on a doomed ship in space, or from the tendency the crews develop to desperately drink their cargo, which entirely consists of mouthwash that gets you a little drunk and a lot more likely to see a gigantic horse creature bellowing through the storage area. Everyone here wants to get out, but no one really knows how, especially since the captain was burned beyond recognition in the whole explosion and hasn't been able to say anything except for screams of pain and you having to shove medicine down his throat. But to be honest, on the bright side, the crew is half decent, I guess, but that only really makes it that much more traumatic when they start to die. Anya, for example, being the ship nurse, tends to everyone's psychological and physical injuries. Seems normal enough. She always oddly mentions, though, things about the ship not being secure enough, or for some reason there not being locks on the bedroom doors. Not to mention her general distrust for the co-captain Jimmy, and if that doesn't raise a red flag, I don't know what does. For those who can't read between the lines, she was assaulted, which was bad enough, but on top of this, post-crash, the only person willing to help her out is burned beyond recognition, and Jimmy, her assaulter, is the new captain. This understandably causes extreme spiraling and mental decline, until eventually she locks herself inside of the medical office, intent on ending her own life. In a desperate attempt to stop her from doing this, the youngest crew member crawls through the vents and in the process gets incredibly damaged and impaled by the damaged structure and assumably exposed wiring, only to realize that he is too late anyway. After these two members are confirmed dead, all hell seems to break out, with the remaining crew members attempting to kill each other, with unfortunately the two captains being the only ones left. In this situation, there isn't really a single person that you could put yourself in their position and not end up in a miserable, pain-filled death. But to be honest, this is going to get way worse, so I'll put this location at a 5. Being in the middle of nowhere can sometimes have its perks, but that all goes out the window when you realize that if you run into some sort of eldritch being that you'll never be able to understand, you're completely on your own and likely to be fucked. In this scenario, you enter this forest with somebody else, but it starts to become apparent over time that they are deteriorating, and for one reason or another, they die, leaving you completely on your own with their corpse. And that's when the truly abnormal events began to happen. For whatever reason, the only animals around were squirrels, forcing you to hunt them to survive. But you could never bring yourself to throw away the skin. For reasons beyond you, you stapled each one onto the corpse of your dead associate. This doesn't help the unexplainable events happening. In fact, it makes it worse. First, you notice the corpse of a goat is thrown on your floor inside of a pentagram, warning you to stop what you're doing, and in big letters, blood spells, "In 5 days, God is coming." Without another choice, you decide to keep wandering the woods looking for food. You find a station that you don't remember being there before. Inside, you find multiple logs, speaking of someone who worked in that station, and began to hear something extremely odd outside where they were working, starting off just with small little skittering and random moving around outside, and eventually noticing dozens of squirrel bodies just littered around the station. There's something about either the isolation or mental state of whoever wrote these logs, but the next one somehow manages to get so much worse. It reads, "It's in the walls now, in the concrete, looking for my brain. It can't find it because my brain is inside my skull, but it will. It will peel away skin and bone to get inside. When my brain is taken, I will come for you. I will break you open. I will take yours instead. I'm in the shadows now. I am seeing you cower. You are already stretched apart into pieces. Your head is already twisted off the spine." Alright. This note honestly threw me off, but I'm curious to see how it ends. You continue to search the building only to find the last log before suddenly going oddly silent. The only line on it reads, "Please disregard previous reports. Everything is quiet." Whoever wrote these logs, it seems something seriously wrong happened to them, with the main red flag being that there's no way that it all of a sudden went quiet, as ever since the beginning it's been talking about a noise that is steadily growing outside of the station. So to me, this seems like something replaced whoever was there, and it might not even be human anymore. But before this fear can even set in for you, you notice an extremely large stump on the outside of the station, and it's not what you'd expect it to be. Outside the building stands the corpse that you've been stapling squirrels to this entire time, with the hollow skin of them seeming to stare right into your soul. You don't know how many days you have left, but on the way to your cabin you notice one more note. God is coming tomorrow. You don't sleep that night. The body just stands over you, and you know it's watching, but it still remains completely still. And to be honest, if you hadn't just seen it for yourself, you probably would never have believed that it was somehow moving around. The next day, despite your efforts to stay inside your home, you find yourself compelled to go outside either by hunger, insanity, or something else. Before long, you realize that you are in a new, incredibly deep part of the woods. A small sound slowly begins to ring inside your ear, a chorus slowly getting louder, exclaiming God is coming. Eventually, it's all you can hear, forcing you to fall to the ground in agony. Something large appears above you. God is here. Now, the Squirrel Stapler Forest is something extremely disturbing, but also avoidable. There are many warnings that you likely shouldn't be doing this, and only the act of you continuing leads to your death. But to be honest, I kinda believe this may be more unavoidable than you might expect. Squirrel Stapler has always been extremely odd, but at the same time unnerving, as you know something is wrong, as no normal person would do something like this, and knowing that you will eventually face judgment from something and nonetheless face it by yourself is uniquely terrifying. I would say the situation is grim, but not the craziest we will see, so I'll give this place a 6. Now, the Manto Schoolhouse, as I'm bluntly calling it, is essentially the remains of a place that was originally used for classes and is now completely fenced off and abandoned, not meant to be entered by anyone. To get an idea on what it would be like to enter this place, picture you doing contract work for a future construction project to renovate the building and make it new again. But unfortunately, and to your complete confusion, you're doing this by yourself, and in the middle of the night, and it's raining. So you can see where this is going. First thing you see when you get inside is the numerous missing person posters strewing the walls. A large amount of the doors are locked, but that doesn't stop you from getting incredibly lost roaming the halls. The building being multiple floors doesn't help either. You think you'd have a flashlight, but the best you can get is a lighter. Rather than, normal classrooms, odd barred doors line the halls. Through one of them is an incredibly tall figure that runs past the door, looking to be at least 7 feet tall. You can't even justify how something like that could be real. The door jam you came in seems to have had something collapse on the other side, trapping you inside the building. In a desperate attempt to escape, you begin crawling through the old filled with some sort of excessive skittering of a gigantic bug. Honestly, crawling through the vents is not something I would do under any circumstance, but you really don't have any other choice. After crawling around for a while and likely losing all sense of reality, you find an opening that oddly enough leads into some sort of creepy ass stone dungeon with a deep well in the back. And if things couldn't get any worse, it speaks to you, telling you about what exactly that thing is. The Akamanto is actually a Japanese spirit that tends to linger around old bathrooms, which makes sense because this place has like 10 of them. And typically it's going to offer you 2 types of paper. If you take the red one, it signals some sort of bloody death, and if you take the blue one, it signals some sort of strangulation. Both don't seem like viable options. I don't know how you win here. I don't know, run I guess. With this new info in mind, totally not making you feel so much worse, you eventually have to go back to the vents to find a way out, and therefore through the entity yet again, ending up inside of a dark library with text flashing on your screen. Now, I don't know if you're desperate enough to just make a break for the window or keep trying the door, but chances are you're going to get stabbed to death. This place, in my opinion, is a 4, as technically a murderous demon haunting a school is relatively tame at this point, unlike the nightmare that is our next location. Now, the sewers from Lost in Vivo are, despite how they appear, a lot deeper than you might think, as they're actually supposed to be a form of exposure therapy given to a sort of distressed individual. Now, I don't know what kind of cruel shit this is, but you're going to have to follow your dog down a set of sewer pipes through a bunch of entities that I can't even begin to explain. So let's get into it. Having recently adopted this dog, I'm thinking those fuckers somehow trained it to pull you into this. The initial sewers appear normal. Think walking through the typical dark wet tunnels, blind homeless people running you down, creepy ass radios, pit to hell, you know, the average sewer experience. Whistling helps you sort of pinpoint what direction to go in, but at this point you should even question if it's even your dog anymore on the other side, or something else conveniently luring you deeper and deeper into the system. As I mentioned, you encounter an odd company, and I mean super odd. He seems to enjoy the idea of watching bugs devour meat and believes something is stalking him down here. Great. This escalates until he eventually rips out his own eyes as some sort of fucked up offering. Damn, this is some great therapy here, doing a real number on my declining sanity and, you know, mental health. Similar to the movie As Above So Below, the sewer system just seems to keep going down and down. Abandon all hope, ye who enter here. Wow, this is just dead as hell. Despite the obvious warnings that this place at the end of the tunnel is going to be your last, you're really determined to find your dog. So after going down, you end up in a hallway filled with various creatures on the other side of bars, writhing in a sort of anger and pain. Now, I would have you guys guess on what we're going to run into next, but I guarantee what you're going to say is not subway system. In the most gleeful manner possible, you're almost immediately greeted by the train that you stepped onto running over someone. Similar to some of the other games, the only hint around you is sets of notes, reading about someone who is long gone, stuck in a horrible situation, forced to have a child that ended up dying soon after birth. And I'm not sure immediately what this would mean. You're going to exit the now crashed train only to find yourself hearing noises around you. The more notes that you find, the darker it gets, and eventually an entity appears to be following you. At this point, you're honestly unaware on what exactly to do, but you need to get that train running again. It doesn't take more than a second to determine that you want absolutely nothing to do with this entity, and you begin running for the breaker. Alright, I'll be completely honest, I didn't expect the weakness of this thing to be like 50 watts, but regardless, it seemed to have done the job. And hey, guess the train is back up. So it seems like after this section, you have one of two options. You're either A, gonna end up in a room with a giant parasite that you have to fight, or honestly, I don't even care what the other option is, just get me away from that thing. Wait, can I go back? It's dingy as fuck in here, and I can definitely see the zipper on the back of that thing. And I don't know how you expect me to believe that that's my real dog for even a second, and it's just suddenly walking up to me after I've been running it down for hours. Yeah, that's about what I expected. After escaping this, for lack of a better term, thing, the cave eventually starts to lead into some sort of concrete walls. And if I learned anything from the back rooms, a sudden change of scenery means that we're eventually getting somewhere. And logically, I could assume that we're almost out, right? I mean, we couldn't possibly end up in some sort of abandoned hospital lab, right? Because that wouldn't make any sense. Okay, let's keep going, I guess. This level seems to me like one of the worst. It's obvious that soon after entering that you're in a weird office with what's left of a doctor's failed, or I don't know, maybe in his mind succeeded, experiment. And by experiments, I mean humanoid rat men, corpses of rats, and finally what the doctor's calling his savior, which is essentially an SCP-173 motherfucker referred to as Sotaris. And similar to said entity, you cannot outrun it, especially since it, you know, teleports around you. And for those unfamiliar, the only way to keep it from killing you is to keep your eye on it. I honestly could not imagine how this thing came to be, as the notes technically say it was birthed, and I really don't want to imagine that. Regardless, following a panicked sprint once again is not getting better, but much worse, running through rooms of hanging corpses, with your only hope seeming to be an elevator, but it needs some sort of eyeball scan. Now normally I would pass the fuck out if I had to grab an eye from a pile of meat, but it seems our good friend here is beginning to tweak, and I seriously don't trust the whole look at it thing working for long. Alright, with that, we are in the elevator going up, and I think that's it for now. Now I might be slow, but shouldn't we be, you know, going up? We are never getting out of here, are we? Now I would tell you about the whole siren section, but it's essentially a repeat of the sewers, but with this thing in it. So Honestly, at that point, I'd give up. I'm going to give this location a 10 because truly it might be one of the scariest places I've ever had the misfortune of playing through. Okay, now for those unfamiliar with Silent Hill, picture going to a location that you were once familiar with in order to find a loved one that you thought has been dead for a really long time, only to be put into some sort of corrupted reality that is chocked full of your old traumas, memories, and fears that will now be in the form of entities trying to attack and kill you. Now, Silent Hill as a whole could technically just be thrown on this list as one location, but there's so many different areas in it that I wanted to take the worst of the worst in my opinion, specifically the Labyrinth. A labyrinth, for those unfamiliar, is most of the time where people go to die. The original labyrinth comes from mythology, uses a prison for untamable entities like the Minotaur, and a clever way to murder people that you don't like. Someone stole your little brother? Into the labyrinth. Someone robbed your shit? Into the labyrinth. Someone made a mistake on a pinpoint accuracy details in a video essay? Oh, for sure that motherfucker's going into the labyrinth. But what exactly happens when you're in there? Typically, you walk through mazes until you run into the creature locked inside, but in the case of Silent Hill, that creature is more likely a giant butcher with a metal pyramid for a head. But honestly, we shouldn't think about that quite yet. The last few days have been a blur for you almost entirely here, desperately trying to find what you were looking for, and immediately walking into the labyrinth, you can tell this might be the place to make you give up. Hey, what could the absolute worst thing down here be? Could it be A, swarms of bugs and mannequins, B, Pyramid Head, or C, something so traumatic and disturbing that I really don't think anyone can comprehend it? And being honest, should we really? Well, it's more like E, which is all of the above, plus much, much worse. Now, to begin your delve into this maze-like area, you're going to immediately notice that there are swarms of bugs literally everywhere, and at this point I would just lay down, give up, and let them devour me. But if you expect to survive, you need to push through it and keep going. Puzzles are all going to be kind of difficult, but relatively straightforward, forcing you to jump through pits of unknown depth until you eventually make it down a long hallway. All at once, a red light fills the room and the walls begin to collapse. Attempting to run just makes you trapped in another room and swarmed by tons of entities. Lucky for you, they don't seem to have eyes, but this luck fades when you reach a room with an almost grate for a floor. Skittering can be heard from the other side, and it makes you realize that holy fuck, they are literally in the floors. Gigantic sharp limbs stun you and almost cut through you completely. Though, after what seems like hours, eventually the door opens, everything is suspiciously quiet. But over time, the sound of that damn dragging blade cuts through all the silence. This creature appears to be one of those traumatic recreations that I was talking about before, labeled as, quote, a symbol of punishment. Wow, that's fun. Alright, I am not letting that thing fucking near me. At this point, I don't even know what's worse, the thing behind us or the wall of human limbs and meat in front of us, that I'm assuming we only have the choice to trudge through. After a while, it's becoming obvious that something is different, but before you can put it together, you enter into a dark room. Here you find what appears to be another person on the floor, pleading to something in the dark. Eventually, it comes out of the dark, revealing, what the hell is that, like a living painting? Why is it creaking? Oh, okay. I'm 90% sure I'll get some sort of banned if I talk about it. So I'll let you put two and two together on what this looks like to you. But to summarize, I was talking about the whole manifestation of traumas thing. And yeah, so I guess Anya wasn't the only person who's being frequently assaulted. And to make things worse, the lady on the floor is referring to this thing as her dad. So I'll let y'all go ahead and put that together. Regardless of what it is, you seem to be the one dealing with it now, as it throws you through a wall, and the only way to get away is by squeezing through various closets and crawl spaces. The rooms get darker as this abstract entity ironically destroys the house. Televisions sit in corners, glitching and spewing what sounds to be a man yelling. It's not completely familiar to you, but you have to remember this wasn't made to torment you. And to make things worse, the other woman is said to view the creature much worse than you do. So, I'm gonna be honest, I don't think you're making it out of here, and even if you do, you wouldn't make it past what's coming next. It's just too much insanity. So I'm going to go ahead and give it a solid 8 on the scale. Typically people in this sort of research profession most of the time spend all their time in, like, say, a lab, until eventually they get that one opportunity to discover something that no one else has ever seen. In this case, your bosses give you some sort of assignment, but it's extremely odd and vague, talking about finding the origin of life somewhere deep underwater, but it's enough to pique your interest and to get you in a submarine going into the ocean. Regardless, now you're inside of a submersible treading down into an undersea lab, into a place referred only as Gaspar Zone. Once there, you are more fully briefed on what is exactly going on. It seems that there was intense studying of an extremely old document labeled the Genesis Apocryphon, or one of the original secret writings of the holy text, and it may provide humanity many answers that it's been looking for to the origin of its life. So let's just get this straight. They want us to go down here to search for relics in pitch dark on the bottom of the open ocean. Well, have fun, guys. I think I'm going to sit this one out. Unfortunately, you don't seem to have the same courtesy, so you start filling up oxygen tank and take a few trips sifting through all the sand, all while shaking in just pure shock of what you have let people convince you into doing. You manage to find the remnants of fish and coral, but when you take it back, the numbers don't seem real. They're old, impossibly old, over 10,000 years at least. That wouldn't be so crazy, just your average fossil, except for the fact that these fish are living animals, human skulls, and even worse, you somehow managed to dig up a diver's mask, meaning you likely weren't the first one down here. But if this is all that's left of them, then where did they go? There seems to be only one way to find out. Alright, after that I might have just pissed myself. I want to go home now. I really don't want to be here anymore. Now, I don't know about you guys, but a giant ocean creature speaking perfect English is where I draw the line. I think we are seriously approaching the point of no return here. At this point, I would just strongly recommend we could leave, but I really don't think that's an option at this point. Next samples that we get are even older, going all the way back to even the origin of life on Earth in general, except for the fact that they somehow share some DNA with the human race, despite them being extremely ancient ocean creatures. However impossible this may be. Is this computer on fucking drugs or something? Like, what's going on here? This can't possibly be real, right? But you don't really have much time to troubleshoot because something is wrong with your vision, and you seem to be almost on the verge of collapsing. In the mirror, your skin seems to be turning rough and red, and all you can think about is going outside, even without your air tank. As you leave the submersible for the last time and your vision begins to fade out completely, this is the last thing that you see. Gaspar Zone is definitely unnerving as hell, but compared to the others, I'm gonna give it about a 4 on the scale. After all of that, I'm really happy to be back on land, but this situation isn't much better. It seems to be what's left of a construction site that was halted suddenly by an unknown source. Not to mention there's just large amounts of human bodies of what is assumed to be the construction workers. Well, looking back, to the average person, this would look like a normal job. You show up to get some construction work done and move on with your life. That is until one morning, one of your coworkers mentioned some weird characters in robes acting almost in protest of the project, but just standing and staring. But don't worry, your boss is surely going to have them removed, or I guess they'll just leave on their own? Alright, well that made things easier. You would normally start getting ready for work at this point, but it seems like the sky has turned red, with what seems like a black cloud coming over the horizon. You really need to get the hell out of here. But it seems like it might be way too late. In reality, what is going on is a giant swarm of birds has found themselves tearing apart everything that moves. They have darkened the sky with just how many there are, and everyone around you is in a panic. They seem like they have all rallied behind the idea of going to the old church. I guess it's about time you join them. This is where the game actually begins, as you start to move through these forests full of like swarms of birds that just keep getting bigger and bigger until eventually you're forced to use weapons like a shovel around you just to start seeing how many you can beat out of the sky. But this doesn't do much, so you're first to jump from house to house while survivors are torn out of the windows and left with mutilated limbs while strewn across the floors. After what seems like forever, you manage to reach the church, an unsettling decrepit building almost too quiet. Seems like something worse than you could have ever imagined. The flesh from your killed coworkers have been meshed into a gigantic abomination with wings. Looking around the room doesn't help either, but I'll let you observe that for yourself. There's only one solution for something like this, is of course to just burn the whole place down. I don't even care anymore. You'd probably think that after suppressing that thing from memory, it would be nearly over, but the second you walk outside, you realize it might be a lot worse than you imagined. The situation having 0 survivors deserves at least a 7, but we actually have one more location to go over. Our last one is something that even caught me off guard when playing the level, since Cruelty Squad as a whole is really subtly creepy at best, with just a lot of weirdness and random graphics. As you work as a trained assassin for a large company, killing whoever they ask you to. You start off in a sort of like bog swamp, and then immediately make your way through a secret entrance into this area surrounded by mountains in this weird long valley. Immediately you notice 2 things. First, the way in front of you is blocked and boarded off, and an NPC for the first time in the game advises you to under no circumstances proceed forward, that something seriously wrong is going on and you probably do not want to find out what. And that about checks out, because this whole time ever since you walk into this level, you're going to hear one of the creepiest OST that I've ever heard in any game, and I hope that I'll be able to find it and put it in the background so you guys can see exactly what I'm talking about here. It almost sounds like it's just like a gigantic creature making this noise somehow. As you get further into the level, it almost seems like it's getting louder. The more people that you meet, the worse it seems, as all these people living on their properties claim that their neighbors and loved ones have been disappearing in the middle of the night by unknown forces. The game makes sure to let you know that you're being watched, as it will randomly switch the perspective of someone high in the mountains viewing your character, which is something that happens nowhere else in the game for the record, so this seriously put me on edge. Eventually, you reach the first main structure. It is extremely hidden, and inside you see what appears to be a cult of some sorts, living inside this odd mine. But it gets worse. Upon dropping a few of them, you begin to realize that they have parasitic rats inside their heads, and they are all over the place, dozens of them. You barely make it into the back room, which has some sort of hole in the floor. It seems we are getting closer to our objective. By this point, the worst should be out of the way, right? So we can just jump down and oh my god! You quickly notice that you are now inside the main mine, except for this mine is alive. I don't even know how you would navigate this in real life, but if you did manage to, you would find your target in the back, who seems to be just as brainwashed by the parasites as everyone else in the cult, only saying the term vegan meat before you end him. Now, I'm not going to go into any of the implications of all that. It appears that the mountain is an entire living creature, kind of like a mystery flesh pit style ordeal. Instead of just researching it, they seem to be harvesting it for people to eat in stores. I'm also not really going to try to put 2 to 2 together. The fact that the giant sound that I was hearing earlier is likely the living mountain crying out in pain. I really hope that's not what it is, but you know, it probably is, knowing this level. Honestly, should have listened to the guy in the beginning. But regardless, it's just disturbing. There isn't really a lot of danger other than the rats, I guess, so I'll give this one a 3. I hope y'all enjoyed my disturbing locations video. If you guys want me to do a part 2 with, say, analog horror or another one about video games, I have so many more on my list that I could put in here, and I could easily do a part 2. Just let me know in the comments down below or by giving this video a like. I would really appreciate it if you made this far to drop a sub, as I'm really trying to reach 100K by the end of this year so I can do my Q&A for y'all.